Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media, and tonight we on our educational slash political channel. We have Miss Jamekia Kendrix, and she's running for the Kansas City School Board, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself and what district she's running in. Welcome to the show, Jamekia.
Thank you. Well, I am a parent. I used to be a parent of students in Kansas City Public Schools. I have a son who graduated from Central in 2018. He's a senior at Missouri S&T right now. I have a 18-year-old daughter. She graduated from Allen Village last year, took a gap year, and will be attending Columbia College Chicago in the fall. I'm married. I've been with my husband for 25 years, but we've been married for, it'll be 16 years this year. And he is like a huge support that allows me to do the work that I've done with advocacy. I've done a lot when it comes to organizing and advocating for parents, as well as teaching like in education in general. So with organizing and advocating, I've done that for about 15 years in Kansas City Public Schools. I've been a teacher for 6 years, 7 if you count when I was doing substitute teaching as a long-term sub in charter schools. The thing that got me into education, I think that's the biggest part of my story. I am a graduate of the Pembroke Hill School. I graduated in 97. And I describe that as the best and worst experience of my life, because I got a top-notch education. I couldn't have received that type of education anywhere else. When I went to college, my first year, I tested out of all the gen ed classes, and still my first semester of college was review of what I had already learned. So I couldn't have got that at any other school. However, I had to endure a lot of racism and classism that I was not prepared to deal with. When I had children, I decided I didn't feel like any kid should have to go through what I did in order to get a quality education. So I wanted my kids to attend public schools. I initially enrolled them in University Academy because I didn't know the difference between charter and traditional public schools. And he ultimately ended up pulling both students out of University Academy. And so with my kids, when I put them in the public school system, even UA, I felt like, or I knew that I was going to have to do some advocacy. I was going to have to do some work to make sure they could get a quality education that would prepare them for college and career. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years.
All right. Tell me this. What's your platform that you're running on?
I am all about engagement. I think there needs to be in the school district trust built. And I think you only build trust through relationships. And when we talk about building relationships on a big scale, we call that engagement. And so with Kansas City Public Schools, and actually all of the school systems with which I've worked, the ones I've worked in, as well as ones that I've done research on and that kind of thing, all of them struggle with engagement, with actually creating that partnership between parents and teachers, as well as a partnership between the district and the communities that it serves. So the way I describe that is when people choose not to put their children into Kansas City Public Schools, why are they doing that? Because they don't trust the district to educate their students. When the district chooses to make a decision and they tell the community about it after the decision's been made, why do they do that? Because they didn't trust the community to be reasonable and responsible and open to new ideas or changes. And so they make these decisions. Well, when they're doing that, then all of a sudden our schools are not meeting the needs of our families. And I think in order to meet the needs of our families, we've got to pull them in. The other thing that I use, so I've described the why of why I'm doing engagement. And now I want to describe like why I think engagement is different from what we've done in the past and why these people need to be brought to the table. So the thing I've been using for the last few weeks after processing with my husband and coming up with it was the meme that everybody sees that has the people who are standing in front of a fence, and there's a short person, there's a medium-sized person, a tall person, everybody's on a box. And then they say, you know, this is not equitable. So this is equal, but not equitable. So then they switch the boxes around. And so they'll take and put the
I've seen that on Facebook.
Yeah.
But you have to have some intellect to figure it out almost. I looked at it and then the part that you're explaining now. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So then they take it and they put 2 boxes underneath the short person, 1 box under the medium person, and there's no box under the tall person, and everybody can see over the fence, right? Then there's another one where they say, you know, real equity would be if we just remove the fence so everybody had access. And it's like, okay, but what if the issue for the short person was they didn't have glasses and they needed them? So now we've moved all these boxes and we've removed this fence, but this person still can't see. Why? Because we never talked to that person to understand what they needed in order to be able to see. And so as a district, Kansas City Public Schools is really focused on equity. Across the country in urban education, they're focused on equity. But because they dismiss engagement, a lot of times we're moving boxes around, we're removing fences, but we're not actually meeting the need because the person is still standing there needing glasses. So that's why my platform and everything I'm moving for is all about engagement, bringing the voices of our parents and our teachers to the table, and our community, because I think those are the ones that have the greatest impact on student outcomes. What happens in the classroom, what happens at home, and what happens when you're doing those things in the community with your family. That's what really makes it where or supports a student in doing their best in school.
All right. Tell me this. What kind of job do you think the current superintendent is doing?
I love her. So I am glad you asked that question. I was pushing for her after she did what she did with the Blueprint 2030. Now, mind you, I've been doing work with parents in Kansas City Public Schools.
I'm the cutoff king. My people might not know because I don't know. Blueprint, tell them what that is.
I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it and explain it. So before I want to make it clear, like with Dr. Collier, it's not just Blueprint 2030. I've worked with her for about 15 years now. When we were doing work with parents, trying to stop C-Trust, or C-Trust is a charterizing organization that was going to be brought in to illegally move Kansas City Public Schools into a charterized school system instead of a traditional public school system. When we were fighting state takeover, which we found when we did research was like the worst thing you could do to a failing school system. As parents, we did the research and found that out. When we were fighting that, Dr. Collier was instrumental in allowing us access to the parents at Border Star, where she was principal, so that we could organize parents and kind of come against these things. So I had a lot of respect from her then, because she was about making sure that we were listening to and meeting the needs of our communities that we serve. And then when Blueprint 2030 came, and she shifted. So Blueprint 2030 is the strategic planning process that the district has been in under Dr. Bedell for about the last 3 years. And it's supposed to spell out what the district's priorities and goals are, and their plan to get there over up until 2030. So over the next 7 years now. It was supposed to be a 10-year plan, but obviously they took 3 years for planning, so we're not quite there. In that plan, before Dr. Bedell left, he announced that we would be closing 10 schools. Initially, Dr. Collier was going around and giving that feedback to the people in the community, assuming that this engagement had been done and done well because of the information that had been presented back to the superintendent and his cabinet from the communications team that was under Dr. Bedell. When she got into the community, what she found is the majority of the people affected had not actually had an opportunity to engage. And she chose to listen to them. So she took that list of 10 schools and said, we're not closing 10. We are going to tell the community what we need as far as enrollment, what we need as far as money in order to provide for those students. And we're going to close 2 schools, and that's it. And so she listened to the community. So I'm thrilled with her.
All right. I was getting ready to cut you off. They call me the cutoff king.
Okay, well, next time cut me off.
Yeah, all right. Because what you mentioned, you said Bedell's communications team, and I thought it stunk because we have the largest Black audience in Kansas City, digital audience and what have you. No matter how many times we met with them to try to get them to do just like what you're doing now, to give our community a chance to get a full-throated explanation of the bills and the things that they were doing, and they never did it. And I found that the KC school district, they had a revolving door of personnel, especially in communications, and people were coming here, building their reputation, and then moving to another district.
Yep.
And it wasn't serving our community really well. And hopefully, you've given a glowing report on Madame Superintendent now. And I'm wondering, Jamekia, I'm wondering why your face looks familiar, but you are very informed, and it seems like you've done your research, and it seems like, I don't know how you just slipped up under the radar of Cascade Media Group in our educational channel, because what you have just talked about has been enlightening for myself. And from my perspective, charter schools and all of that diversity, those undercut the needs of people of color, and that diversity just weakens down everything we've been trying to do, putting a lot of different people in the pot. We need diversity, but that needs to be explained in an intelligent way, because all of this diversity comes off the back of people of color struggle. Basically, the civil rights movement, and then they start putting everybody LGBT, and all of them need their spot. But we built this country, and the school system now almost is becoming a class deal, and that's where I see the charter schools coming in. What do you have to say about that?
So I have a lot to say about charter schools, about the setup in Kansas City public schools, all of that, because I've been in this for a while and I've experienced it from all levels. So I'll give you a few stories. Cut me off if you need to. So with regard to the choices that we make, no, actually before that, with regard to charter schools, I'll give you sort of how my perception of them is formed. Obviously, my initial thing when I was looking for a school as a parent was looking at which schools were showing that they, had the highest test scores, the most students being going to college or getting accepted to college, that kind of thing. University Academy was top notch. I found out that University Academy was also going to be starting its first kindergarten class. And it just happened to be when my son was going to kindergarten, which was in 2005. And so, and some friends had referred me. So I put my child into University Academy because, as I said before, I wanted them to get as high a quality of education as I was able to receive at Pembroke, or not as high, but comparable from the traditional public schools. So they're in UA. My daughter, I moved out because a parent told me about a dual language program, Carver Dual Language in Kansas City Public Schools. I wanted my children to be bilingual. I didn't know of an option when I put my son in school. And so I wanted to put my daughter in that program. My son was too old for me to shift him to that program at the time because they stopped accepting students once they were in second grade. and my son is 4 years older than my daughter. So anyways, so my daughter's in a traditional public school, my son's in UA. My son in middle school starts to have issues with behavior. And I'm like, this is my kid. They don't have issues with behavior because they're my kids. So I'm talking to his teachers and things, and I'm going up to his school, spending the whole day there, unable to figure out what's going on. And then my son tells me, well, Mom, half the kids are new. I'm like, wait, what? You've been there? No, he said, Mom, I'm trying to impress the kids. And I said, wait, what? You've been there since kindergarten. How are you trying to impress these kids? He tells me half the kids are new. I'm like, that is like crazy to me. So I go up, I go to a board meeting, speak to the superintendent, and I tell him my son said this. He says, no, it was only 40%. And I was like, are we really going to fight over 10%? So most of there are a lot of kids who are new. What's going on? He says, I think it's too rigorous for those kids. And so they leave. And I said, but if they've been here since kindergarten, that's all they know. How is it suddenly too rigorous in middle school? So he says, I don't know. I just feel like the families understood it was too rigorous and decided to leave. So I said, what's the largest class that you bring in that elementary school level? He said they average 120 students in the elementary classes. And I said, well, what's been your largest graduating class? At that time, he said it was around 40 students. And I said, so you're okay with 75% attrition? And he said, well, that's what we get when it's too rigorous and we stop backfilling after they get into high school. So what that said to me is, no, you don't kick students out, but you do weed them out so that you continue to look like you are the best option for all kids. And for you to have a mission that says you are offering this opportunity to students who wouldn't otherwise have it, that's a lie.
It's smoke and mirrors.
Yes. And so that was one thing as a parent that I saw. So I pulled my son out of University Academy. This is the other flip side to that, because University Academy has these numbers. I pulled my son out. Mind you, I had not received any communication from University Academy about my son not doing well academically. And his grades reflected that he was still doing well academically. So I moved him over to Central. And he actually told me, Mama, I think somebody in my school said that's child abuse for you to put me over there. They kill people. I'ma die. I was like, boy, the same people you play with in the neighborhood are the kids that go to Central. And he was like, oh. So he went to Central. We find out that even though he went to UA in kindergarten, performing and reading at a second grade level, when he went to Central, he was actually performing at basic, not advanced or proficient anymore. He was at basic in reading comprehension and in writing. And I said, how is that possible? And it's because I wasn't paying attention to what he was getting out of University Academy, because I trusted it because it said it was the best. He went over to Central, got a teacher that worked with him. He got his grades up. He got his comprehension up. He was able to do well on that test, and he was able to enter into the early college academy program. So he graduated with an associate's degree and his high school diploma, and he wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not pulled him out of UA, because he brought to light what they were doing when they were pushing students out. So then I also taught in a charter school. I taught in Pathway Academy, and I actually worked with teachers at that charter school to get the charter school closed successfully. When I went to that charter school, I was in a meeting, and it was before math test time. And we were supposed to be talking about what students needed, some extra supports or on the math or accommodations is what we call them. And you have to tell DESE, or the Department of Education and Secondary Education, in advance. So we're supposed to be discussing those so we could submit to get these accommodations. When we walk into the meeting, what the person said who was leading it was, where are we on getting these kids out? And they had a list of kids that they felt were not going to perform well and who also had behavior issues. And at that school, they were provoking the kids, because if you had 5 behavior incidents, they could expel you. So they were provoking the kids to either cause the parents to say, you're causing me to take off work too much, or you're interfering, I gotta pull my kid out, or for them to say, your kid has had too many behavior incidents, we're putting them out. And that same superintendent of Pathway Academy, what really tipped me and made me really work with the teachers were 2 staff meetings. One in which he said that he couldn't make chicken salad out of chicken shit, referring to the students as chicken shit, the ones who weren't performing well. And the other one, he said he couldn't make chicken soup with chicken shit. And I'm like, how dare you refer to our kids that way? So I worked with them and used connections that I had made with DESE through parent organizing to get the school closed. The other flip side, I'm not against charter schools, even though it would seem like I would be after those experiences. Well, my daughter went to Kansas City Public Schools, as I told you, in Carver, and she was doing excellent in Carver. She moved to Paseo, and they had moved the middle school in with the high school at that time. And they had a new principal who didn't understand the culture of Paseo and really destroyed it. So my daughter had a hard time, and I ended up having to pull her out. I was looking for other options in Kansas City Public Schools. There were none that would provide the structure that she needed. So I ended up having to put her into Allen Village because my sister recommended that. She said it was one of the best schools she ever went to. She said, my baby sister is like 14 years younger than me, so she was closer. She said it was the best school she ever went to. And it really helped her with her Blackness, her identity, because it was mostly Black female teachers who really poured into her. I felt like that's what my daughter needed. She went there and they really did help her. I don't think my daughter, if I had kept her in Kansas City Public Schools, would have been prepared to go to college in the way that she is now, that she's been at Allen Village. So there's a charter school that got one of my kids where they needed to be, and a traditional public school that did. So in my mind, what we need to do is give parents the choice that we've been asking for. We want a high quality school that offers everything our kids could need to be successful in college career that's in the neighborhood in which we choose to live. And with the system we have now, it's given us a lot of choice, but it's taken away that one choice. In this system, we have 11 high schools. It's not possible for you to offer a comprehensive high school that has arts and science and STEM and the different clubs that you can get into and technical education. You can't offer that at 11 different high schools. But if we had 3, we could. But we need a system that allows us to do that. And I don't care whether it's charter or public. What I want it to be is be focused on neighborhoods and also have an elected board. That's important to me because of another situation at University Academy. I swear I'm not picking on them. But recently they were having some issues with racism. Some parents came together and said, we need to do something about this. So they reached out to the building administration at University Academy and the superintendent. They were not able to get it resolved. So they go to the board. They went to a board meeting. When they got to the board meeting, they were told, you can't speak here. So these people are appointed. They have no reason to listen to you. You can't vote them out. What are you going to do?
It's all about the money, honey. So let's keep it moving. We want to close out. What would you have to say to our community and the overall community why they should vote for you, and close this on out?
Well, actually, right now you don't get to vote for me, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I found out from Freedom because they were going to endorse me that I do not appear on the ballot because I'm the only person who collected signatures to get on the ballot. So since I am running unopposed for the 2nd subdistrict, then I'm simply just waiting to be confirmed on April 12th. But I do want to give out some information about running for school board. So the reason, because there are 2 races where they are uncontested. So in the at-large race, we have Josh Jackaway. He had to collect 500 signatures from people who live within the boundaries of Kansas City Public Schools, and turn them into the Missouri Ethics Commission or into the election board in order to get on the ballot. He's the only person who did that. So he's running uncontested. I'm running in district. So I had to get signatures from 250 people who live in the Subdistrict 2 of Kansas City Public Schools and turned those in order to get on the ballot. In Subdistrict 4, there was a person who collected signatures, but then later it was determined that they did not live within the boundaries of District 4, so they couldn't run. So we have a write-in election for Subdistrict 4. And with the write-in, that means they didn't collect signatures. That's why there's going to be a ballot. If somebody collects the signatures and nobody else does, then they don't really run an election. They just say that the person who collected the signatures is our board member. But I would like for people to think about running for the board, learning more about the board. And I will be out, especially in Subdistrict 2 and in the community, to get that information out, because we need people who are committed to our community in the way that I have been, in the way that I say Dr. Collier has been, because she's been with Kansas City Public Schools for 27 years. So we need people who are dedicated to our communities, to our families, to our kids, and who are willing to do some work and to do some learning around education to get us to have a system where we can have that choice of a high quality neighborhood school that offers a comprehensive education for our kids.
Well, I think you laid it all the way out. Boy, I'm saying I hate saying stuff like this because it sounds like, and I'm not racist, it sounds like what white people say. You are well spoken.
Thank you.
You see where I'm coming from on that?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's to me, that's the crux of what you're saying about your kids. You want them to have the same or better linguistic skills and cognitive and the things that you get from your basic education.
Yes. Yes.
And let me say this, as I said to you, I think off camera, I understand. I taught subbed back in the 80s at Meservey Elementary. And I started the Cub Scout and Boy Scout programs in the whole Kansas City school district. But what I found was our kids, because of external situations that take place at home, especially back then, no males in the house and blah, blah, blah. All our kids need is some love and attention. And because that's what they're craving for. And when they talk about discipline, I had like the timeout room, and I was like, any of y'all that come in here, you're gonna do the same thing that you do in the classroom, but I'm gonna be watching over you as you're supposed to be doing. And boy, the whole the student body, everybody, and with that Cub Scout program, the parents had to come in once a month, right? Mm-hmm. And the cafeteria would be full because I would take them camping once a month and what have you. If we have engaged individuals, this is from my personal experience. I don't listen to what the print to a degree, and what our kids are just as smart or smarter than most of the people. That's how I found myself, per se. I thought people were just born smart, but you have to have a system that is basically listening from the ground up, managing from the ground up, and not from the top down. And I think for some time, most of our institutions are managing from the top down. Yep. And when they spend all this money on these consultants to tell you what's wrong or what have you, you could ask a homeless person on the street what's wrong. Give them the $60,000. They'll tell you the same thing that these consultants are saying. Yeah. This was your interview. I took it over a little bit, but I thought that some of these things need to be said and collaborated with, because I'm in total agreement with what you have experienced in the educational system overall. So, give me a little close.
You, huh?
Give me a little short closing.
Well, I will give you my kids that I talked about before, because this goes along with what you said. And it speaks to why this engagement is so important. And my thing is, just like Dr. Collier, this is what we can do together. So if there is anybody who is listening who is like, you know what, I could do a little more, or I'd like to see a little more from my kids. I want to figure out how to navigate this system and be able to give my kids what they need. I am happy to be able to support with that. I am going to give out my number. It's like having the white pages. I would have given it anyways.
Right.
816-237-0291. And just my story about engagement. As a teacher, my second year teaching, I got to be teacher of the year for my building. And I was runner up for teacher of the year for Hickman Mills, which was unheard of at the time, because you were supposed to have 3 years of teaching in order to be considered. The reason I was considered is I had some kids. My principal, because I had subbed there, knew that I had worked well with the struggling kids. So mine was stacked with all the students with the most behavior issues and those students with the lowest test scores. I engaged parents. That was the difference between what I did in my classroom and what other people did. If your kid is in class and they having an issue, I'm going to stop and describe to you in detail what the issue is, what your kid is doing, and we're going to work through it there. You working with me with your kids. I did home visits. If I couldn't reach you 3 times using the phone numbers, I'm coming to your house and I'm sitting and waiting. So I built these relationships with parents. My kids moved from the most behavior incidents to the least behavior incidents, and from the lowest test scores to the highest. And that got me teacher of the year. And I'm telling you, it wasn't me. It was the fact that I engaged and we became partners, the parents and I, in making sure that those students achieved. And so if you decide to step up, reach out to me. We have the opportunity to do the same thing, just on a bigger scale, with me working on that board for you.
I think this was an excellent interview. I think if the people choose to look at it, they'll learn a little more about you. They'll learn a little more about the difference in charter schools and public schools. And as my boy James Watts would say, it was a plum pleasing pleasure to have you on the show tonight. But
pleasure being here.
Yeah, as we always close, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.